Welcome to the C-Suite podcast from FinTech Connect here at the Excel in London. My name is Barrett and I'm going to be interviewing some of the speakers and attendees here on our booth at the event. Now this is the 10th anniversary of FinTech Connect, so I'm going to be asking all of our guests what they see as the most transformative change in FinTech of the last 10 years and what they think might change the landscape in the next 10. Really hope you enjoyed the conversations. Very pleased to say that I've been joined by Neal Lathia, who is CTO and co-founder at Gradient Labs. Neal, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Graham.
No, not at all. We'll start with an introduction to Gradient Labs. Come on, tell us who you are and the problems you're trying to solve.
Yep, sure. Gradient Labs, we're a 2.5-year-old Series A startup, and all three of us co-founders met at Monzo Bank, where we were doing all things data and machine learning. And what we built today is an AI agent that is specifically built for financial services and does everything from live chats, emails, phone calls, and both customers reaching out into banks and financial services, as well as enabling the bank to reach back out to their customers, all the way through to doing work that critically happens behind the scenes in large operations departments of banks.
Yeah. Well, let's talk more about these AI agents in finance. I know one of your other co-founders, Dimitri, is speaking on a session which is titled Lessons from Deploying Compliant AI Agents in Finance. So what I would be keen to know is, across your journey so far, the last 2.5 years, have there been some unexpected moments, any kind of bumps in the road, things that you didn't perhaps foresee?
Yeah, I suppose the one thing that we're always focusing on is how financial services are a bit different. So today you'll find a whole suite of AI agents that are claiming to automate your customer support. But inside of financial services, just pure automation isn't the right end goal. It's obviously a two-sided problem. You need to make your customers happy, but you need to make regulators happy. You need to be compliant. The most surprising thing, I'd say, when going live across all of these the companies that we partner with today, is just how small the teams on their side can be to achieve quite a remarkable impact. So we're talking about small multidisciplinary teams, mixture of product operations and engineering, but maybe less than 10 people, and then within a few months automating up to 50% of the financial services inbound support. So given the scale of that impact, I've always been surprised at how small and lean teams can get it done, even in large financial services.
And among those financial institutions that you've worked with, what has been the feedback? How easy has it been for them to assimilate, what is a completely new process, essentially?
Yeah. So any financial service that's looking at the prospect of adopting AI, usually they are a bit uncertain, and they have heard in the headlines about the risks. But we partner teams with each financial service that we work with, and we're not just trying to get it done as quickly as possible or as easily as possible, but actually as safely as possible. So overall, it's a journey of making sure that the AI does the right job safely as quickly as possible to achieve that impact safety trade-off.
Okay. Now, it's 10 years of FinTech Connect this year, so we're keen to know from all of our guests what they feel has been the most transformative change within FinTech over the last 10 years. What would you say to that?
This is the tough question I've been pondering. So the easy answer, I'd say, is that the transformative parts that have really impacted financial services is all the technology, the wave of big data, the wave of mobile, and the upcoming wave of AI. But really, if I were to pause, I think the most transformative impact over the last 10 years has been the change in the regulators' approach that actually facilitated the birth of new neobanks and financial services and actually encouraged competition in this space. Because I think that's ultimately what fostered this new wave of financial services that we all benefit from today.
Okay, and I'm going to ask you to project forward. It's hard enough to predict a year ahead, but the next 10 years, I know that's a lifetime in FinTech. What changes do you anticipate?
Yeah, I think the best way that I heard it framed is that when there's a new technology that is born, the way you think about that technology when it's born looks very different from what that technology eventually becomes. So just like when the internet was started, nobody thought about ordering taxis on a mobile phone at that time. So that's why it's very difficult to think about the future of financial services, especially now in the age of AI. Having said that, I'd say what it's doing to the companies that we partner with today is it's reshaping how people work. So moving from a world where people are doing the work to a world where people are managing and overseeing the AI agents that do the work on their behalf. So I think that's quite a bright future just because it enables much more growth, much more impact, and much better customer experiences than were possible before, where you just had to throw armies of people at the problem to try and even survive it.
Now, before I let you go, I'm just going to comment on your sweatshirt here, these Gradient Labs sweatshirts. So for those who aren't watching the video version, who are listening to this podcast, what are these shirts all about? Tell us what you can see there.
These are new. There's freshly printed, and it has our little human. And if you go to our website, Gradient.AI, you'll see all these little humans that build up this mammoth structure. And that's how we think about our AI agent, actually. When we're building it and designing it, we think, how is it that humans solve these problems, and how can we safely encapsulate that into an AI agent? So they're quite bright. If you're not watching the video, they're a bright yellow. So I feel a bit awkward, but it's.
You're definitely going to stand out today, aren't you?
Yes,
100%.
Especially when the whole team is together, we're like highlighters. But yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Neal, Lathia, thanks so much for joining me on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Well, delighted to say I've been joined by Chloe Coleman, who is the CEO of VouchSafe. Chloe, welcome to the podcast.
Hi.
You spoke on the FinTech Founders panel, didn't you? So I guess what I'd like to hear is about your founder journey and how you came up with the idea for VouchSafe.
Yeah, of course. So the idea for VouchSafe was a seed that was planted in March 2020. I'm sure you remember it well. I was leading user research at the Department for Work and Pensions, specifically on universal credit. And overnight, we went from having 1.1 million people claiming universal credit to over 5 million.
Yeah.
And so many of those people didn't have the right documentation to prove who they were. And like, people were losing their jobs left, right and centre. People were on furlough. There was no money.
Yeah, I remember it well. Yeah.
And that was where the sort of seed was planted. At that point, my co-founder was building the coronavirus contact tracing app for the NHS.
Wow.
Another throwback.
Yeah.
And was also trying to solve the same problem.
Wow.
So a few years passed, and then we consulted many times with lots of organizations. We were just solving this problem again and again. So we decided to build a product to solve it once and for all.
Okay. And how difficult or how easy was it to build that product?
Incredibly difficult.
Yeah. What were the main challenges?
People in really quite, and importantly, should be regulated areas, but innovation is very hard to get through regulation. Mm-hmm. So the biggest challenge for us was to work out how we were going to do new things without basically, while still being compliant.
Yeah.
So that was the biggest initial hurdle. And I think going straight to the regulators and saying this is what we want to do was the best lesson that we learned. It was the best thing we could have done, because then they knew it was coming and could help us make tweaks to what we were doing so that it was compliant, and kind of pushes the boundaries a little bit, I think, in your first versions, but eventually gets there.
And let's just talk about digital ID.
Yeah.
I'm thinking one of your favourite areas of conversation. Now, it seems like we are inching towards a digital ID. There seems to be an appetite to have that. I'm sure it will come eventually. Yeah. But how close are we to one that's kind of widely adopted across borders, maybe across Europe even to start with?
So that's I could really nerd out about this question.
Yeah, please do.
And VouchSafe are really excited, and we are already accepting digital ID, and we're really excited to continue and grow that. Europe, in particular, I think we are very close. I think by the end of next year, the EU, all EU member states have to provide a wallet to their citizens that can hold a national ID. So that's a year away. I think in the UK, it's a slightly different story. The way that we hold, we don't have a national ID now. The way that we hold data on our citizens is very, very different. You know, your birth certificate lives with one local authority, your marriage certificate with another, and those systems don't necessarily talk to each other. So I think in the UK, having one national universal ID, I think we're years away from it. But digital ID in general is here. We've got e-visas, we've got open banking, we've got the veterans card. VouchSafe accepts all of those. And we've also already got e-visas as well, which is, there's over 4 million of them in the UK already. So it's already here, but when it's cross borders, I think we're looking at the next 5 years there being a hell of a lot of movement there.
Okay. And just picking up on what you said there, why is it so disparate in the UK? Why are all these things held in different places? Is that just the natural way it's evolved, or is there some other reason?
I think it's part of the natural way that it's evolved. I think that we relied so heavily on local authorities and general registration offices and GRO numbers and because I also think it's partly because we're just so old as a nation. Yeah. Basically you needed to be able to register a birth somewhere that you could walk. Yeah. And that for us is we kind of still live in that system,
it's
right?
crazy. Yeah.
So we don't have one big national database. The passport database isn't of all citizens, it's of all people with a passport. And we've been holding data in different places across different government departments and local authorities for since computers. So it's legacy, and it's basically a product of our history.
Now, having said that digital ID is on the way, there still are some concerns around things like privacy, surveillance even, inclusion. How would you address those concerns?
They're all valid. I always say this, any security concern is a valid one. When it comes to sort of privacy, I think digital IDs actually could really change the game in a positive way. If you think about when you go and buy an age-restricted item in a shop, bottle of wine, say, you show if you've got a driving license, you'll show that to the vendor, the person at the till, and they know your name, your age, your address. They know what vehicles you can drive. And they don't need to know what vehicles you can drive in order for you to buy a bottle of Merlot or whatever. So actually, if you can choose which aspects of your ID that you share in order for you to gain access to the relevant thing, then you've got more control over your data than if you're using your driving license for everything. So in terms of inclusion, it's digital inclusion, and it's also the enrollment to any digital ID program we have. If the government are relying on UK passports, there's 14 million adults in the UK that don't have a UK passport. So that's a big problem to tackle. So they have to make sure that that's inclusive. And also, if you're not going to issue a smartphone to every person in the UK, if you're going to require them to have a digital ID, then you're going to need to be issuing physical ID cards as a minimum.
Yeah. But I think the other example he gave me as well when we were speaking before this interview was, you can lose that passport, you can lose that driving license, and suddenly that person has got all of those details. Whereas if you lose your phone, okay, that's a huge annoyance, but hopefully it'll be locked and maybe you can access it in the same way.
And you can revoke a digital ID as well. So when we check a driving license, say, we can't tell. There's no database of if your driving license has been stolen. You're supposed to, if you change your driving license, you're supposed to chop it in half and send it back to the DVLA.
Yeah. Who does that?
Who does that? Who's got the time?
Yeah.
So when it comes to checking a digital ID, if someone has stolen your phone and they are trying to use your digital ID and your digital ID has been revoked, it's not going to pass. So you've got way, way more security long term. Okay,
and then just moving on, it's the 10th anniversary of FinTech Connect. So we're asking all our guests here about the changes they've seen in the last 10 years. Now, you've seen a lot of change. You've already spoken about COVID, and you kind of played an instrumental role there. But in terms of fintech as a whole, what do you see as the biggest change of the last 10 years?
So I'm going to be really boring.
No, please do.
And I'm going to say that I believe it's the Financial Services Act of 2012.
Okay. It's a unique answer. Nobody else has said that, so excellent.
After the 2008 financial crash, regulation changed in order to enable there to be basically more than the big four when it came to banking. And for me, that's like the moment that enabled there to be innovation in banking, because it's still very hard to get a banking license, and still expensive, but it became less hard and less expensive. And for me, that's the runway that allowed the plane of innovation to take off in banking. And it really changes the way that financial services relate to their customers and what customers expect from financial services. And that in and of itself then allowed for innovation in things like B2B software as well. So by opening the gates slightly so that other organizations could become banks and could play in the financial services space, suddenly you've got space for innovation.
Sure. And final question, the next 10 years, which innovations, which shifts, which changes do you anticipate?
Well, I feel like I should say digital ID and AI and all of these things, but actually I'm going to go with open finance.
Okay.
I think that when people are using their financial information in order to apply for things like mortgages or loans or, prove things about themselves, it's a mess and it can be really difficult. And open finance can really change how people share that information, what information they share, and also the reliability of that data as well. So I think open finance has it's a massive opportunity to make things more secure and more easy for people at the same time. And I also, again, think that development will enable there to be loads more, a big boom of innovation in the financial services space again.
Excellent. Well, Chloe Coleman, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast and sharing all of those insights.
Great, thank you.
Joining me now is Lewis Clark, who is go-to-market manager at Monday.com. Lewis, how are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. Yes, pleased to be here.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Now, you've delivered your innovation session, haven't you, here at FinTech Connect, which was, correct me if I'm wrong, around how companies can improve their internal processes and project management. Tell me about some of the fintechs that you work with and maybe some of the challenges they face in that kind of workflow within the organization.
I mean, we work with everyone from venture capitalists right the way through to global financial giants,
right.
And all points in between.
Yep.
And one of the big things for Monday and the space it fills within the fintech infrastructure is that a lot of these organizations have got fantastic specialized systems dealing with risk management, etc. But actually the work that goes on between those systems, so much of it is still being run in spreadsheets, the communal spreadsheet with 200 tasks that's shared amongst a variety of teams, emailed around, that's not owned by anyone.
It seems amazing, doesn't it? These global companies, as you say, that still work in this way. People would be amazed, I think.
And again, I'm talking about a very, very large global giant that's doing reporting on 200 Excel sheets that are being passed around various teams. Yeah. One person is then collating them into a report that takes 2 weeks to do.
Yeah.
And when you put a price tag on that, on the amount of time that's going into a piece of information that someone's making a decision on that's 2 weeks out of date.
Yeah.
It's like, I wouldn't get on a plane if the pilot said to me, sorry, ladies and gentlemen, we're flying blind today. I've got no live data, no instruments, but I've got a couple of printouts from a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
No one's getting on that flight, so why would you run a business that way?
But it's the potential for human error as well, surely. 100%. It's not just the time.
100%. And what you need is that kind of very hands-on visibility, and that's where Monday fills that space. It allows all the teams to work together in a single place, which means you've then got all the data relating to that, where now, if there are risks, if there are issues, if I need reporting, I can just press a button. I can schedule it to automatically put it in my inbox on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, however you want to be able to do it. So it is that consolidation, even integration with other tools, that allows you to have that kind of hands-on visibility.
Now, we're often told that AI is going to completely transform the world of work. It's going to eliminate all these workplace inefficiencies. Can it really do that? What is the key to actually unlocking that potential, I guess, to use a cliche?
Well, there's a few things at play there. So, I come from a media background, and I remember when MTV launched and they said video is going to kill the radio star. It was a very good song for someone. However,
the Buggles, I think
it was the Buggles. It didn't.
No.
Then computers came along, and it was like, okay, this is going to replace us all. It didn't. We just adapted how we worked. The same with the internet. The same with AI. And actually what you first of all need is a strategy as to where do you need your workflows improved. And I say, don't shoot for the moon and try and do a moon landing. The best thing you can do is talk to your best business consultants, that are your people, and actually find the blockers. What are the things that are frustrating them, that they're getting chewed up in, day out, and use AI to speed those things up first. And what AI will do is take care of those kind of mundane tasks, particularly around data processing, whereby it can analyze data and flag the key things that you need to make decisions on much quicker than a human having to sift through this. Because even when, bringing together information for board reports, as an example, we'll spend more time trying to get our hands on the data than we actually get to spend analyzing it and that's where things get missed. So I think that's the real strength of AI, is where the artificial intelligence and the actual intelligence come together. So let AI do the heavy lifting and then bring it to the human, so we've got then more time to think strategically, be more creative and work on the things that actually move the needle, rather than getting bogged down in the paperwork that actually AI can take care of for you.
But if you push that dial on again, will AI be soon doing that oversight, doing the analysis as well? Is that the next stage?
For the mundane stuff, absolutely.
Yeah. But for the non-mundane stuff, for the more, that needs a bit more analysis, a bit more critical thinking, surely it's well adapted to do that.
It is and it isn't, because it's only what's available inside the LLM that's actually, where do you get that outside-in thinking? And I think that's, human creativity, human problem solving. I still think that is an essential part of the being a creative myself, I feel that's an essential part of the process. But again, you can use it. I use it as a tool. Do I use it when I write content? Absolutely I do. Why would I not? Coming from a radio background, we used to be us and a team of producers in a studio that used to brainstorm. We used to call it madmanning. And then you come around to the artist stage of trying to shape it afterwards. And I think, you can use AI as a tool in exactly the same way. So I use it to madman. I dump my stuff into AI. I know what it is I'm trying to say. It doesn't always have a perfect structure, but then AI can help me pull that into some kind of form that then I can play. Okay, that's kind of what I'm trying to say, but this is my wording. Here's how I would do it. Okay, help me sharpen this a little bit. Don't like that. That feels a bit repetitive. Am I hitting the mark with this? And you just use it it's like having a producer.
Yeah. No, it's a good way to look at it. Let's finish up by talking about FinTech Connect, because it is their 10-year anniversary. So we thought it'd be a bit of fun to ask all our guests what they feel has been the most transformative change in FinTech within the last 10 years. I'd be keen to get your perspective on that.
I mean, well, COVID changed quite a lot for everybody.
Absolutely.
But one of the biggest things that I've noticed is cash.
Yeah.
That whole side of things, is, you go into many places now, they don't take it anymore. No. So that whole digitalization of how we use money has been, for me, the thing I've observed the most in terms of how FinTech has changed.
Yeah. And if you had to project forward another 10 years, which is almost impossible in this game, but what would you keep your eye on in the next decade?
I think, again, AI is going to be a big part of all of our futures. It doesn't matter what sector you work in or what team you work in. And I think the key thing is making sure that you're adapting and embracing it. AI is a skill set. We've got to stop seeing it as a shortcut that people want to hide. No, I don't use AI because you don't want to admit it for fear of being replaced. Yeah. But actually, it's not going to replace people. It will replace the people that don't embrace it, because those that do will be faster, better, smarter at what they do. So, AI in terms of FinTech, speeding up all those processes, helping to fill those gaps, will help organizations be able to, as I say, move faster, to be able to connect different parts of the organization.
But we as individuals need to adapt as well, is what 100%. You're saying as well. We have to embrace this and change our working patterns as well. Yeah, it makes complete sense.
It's a skill set.
Yeah.
We should be celebrating it in the same way that you celebrate communication skills or leadership skills.
Sure. Well, thank you so much, Lewis Clark. It was great of you to join me on the podcast.
Pleasure. Thank you, Graham.
Okay, joining me now is Luke Wingfield Digby, who is the co-founder of Orbital. Luke, thanks so much for joining us on the podcast.
Thanks very much for having me.
Yeah, now I'm keen to hear about the FinTech Founders panel that you're a part of here at FinTech Connect. And so I guess the obvious question would be about your founder journey. How did you come up with the idea for Orbital?
Right, yeah. I've been an entrepreneur most of my working life. I grew up in South Africa, founded a number of businesses, mostly in the digital marketing space. And a common theme for me was the frustration I had with the poor level of banking and payment solutions my own businesses had access to. My now wife moved me from South Africa back to the UK, where I was originally born, and it was a good kind of career juncture for me to get involved in something new. And I was really interested in doing something in the payment space and kind of bringing Stripe and Adyen-like payment solutions to emerging markets. And at that point in time, I was naive, not having come from financial services myself, and didn't really understand or appreciate the challenges from a kind of regulatory and compliance perspective about why that's difficult to do. But very fortunately, I met Chris Mason, who's my fellow co-founder, and he's has kind of the polar opposite but very complementary experience to me. He's been in kind of corporate banking and payments his whole career, so I think over 20, 25 years prior to starting this business together. He was looking to break out of corporate life and do something a little bit more entrepreneurial, and we came together and started what Orbital is today.
Yeah, now every fintech founder's journey is different. Were there any particular challenges on the way that you hadn't anticipated?
Oh, I mean, I think every day every day is a new challenge, right?
Yep.
Certainly, some of those topics I touched on already. Compliance and regulation is, they're very challenging, particularly if it's not something that you've had to deal with before. So that's been a huge learning curve for me, but a really exciting one. Other challenges, I think, finding the best possible talent is something that I think is underappreciated. If I were to start a new business again tomorrow, I would put as much effort as possible into finding the highest quality talent and keeping a kind of team small and lean. I think that's can be quite transformative.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's move on to maybe the digital money race, if we want to call it that. How do you see that area playing out? And specifically, I'd like to know if you see stablecoins ultimately complementing traditional banking rails and CBDCs, or is that a kind of distinct and parallel system? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly don't see them remaining distinct or parallel for too much longer. I think, stablecoins or really the blockchains on which they operate are, really just an innovation in the underlying rail. So I think it's inevitable that, and we're already starting to see it, traditional kind of incumbent financial services businesses, whether it's payment processors or banks or other types of MBFIs, they're increasingly developing strategies or launching solutions with regards to stablecoins. So absolutely, I think ultimately it's all going to merge, and it will just be the next rail, so to speak. With regards to CBDCs, though, I think it's nuanced and it really depends. It's very much on a country by country basis, but broadly speaking, I don't really see CBDCs as being a kind of a retail or consumer type product. I think central banks are much more likely to use CBDCs to distribute to other financial intermediaries on a wholesale basis. So whether it's existing banks and credit institutions or non-bank financial institutions such as ourselves, I think they will continue to be responsible for providing the last mile services essentially to the retail.
But surely we're moving towards a point where there won't be any cash. It will always be digital money in the future one day, won't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But that doesn't mean it needs to be a CBDC. I would argue that we're already in an age of pretty much digital money only. Many Scandinavian countries are almost exclusively digital. There's very few in the UK that kind of still use cash, particularly in the younger generations. So arguably we're there already.
Well, let's finish up with. We're touching on the future there in that last question, but because it is the 10-year anniversary of FinTech Connect, we thought it'd be fun to ask our guests what they feel has been the most transformative change in the last 10 years and maybe the biggest impact in the next 10. So let's start with the 10 years just past. What have been the big changes for you?
I mean, we've been building this business since 2017. So, what is that, 8 years? And I think when we first entered the market, the biggest kind of change or disruption at that point in time was, the invention of the neobank, I suppose, if you will. And I think that has really transformed, many areas of financial services and specifically payments. Kind of more recently, I would argue that stablecoins are that next kind of innovation. But I guess it's they're still relatively early in terms of the promise of what they can deliver.
And the next 10 years, I mean, that's almost impossible to predict, but it's always fun to gaze into the crystal ball, isn't it? What do you see as the big transformational changes that are yet to come?
Well, I think again, touching on the stablecoin thing, I think we're yet to see the impact of kind of broader adoption of stablecoins. So I think that is still to come. And outside of stablecoins, I would like to offer you a different answer, but I just feel it has to be AI. It's just I would imagine everyone's going to be agreeing on that point. It's really transforming the way we work across all sectors, not just fintech.
Well, let's kind of let's narrow it down. Maybe that will be helpful in terms of AI, because obviously that's quite a broad term. Of course, in what particular aspect do you think we're all going to see a difference? If you think about when ChatGPT came on the scene, I think the everyday person kind of realized, that's what AI can do on a day-to-day basis. Is there something similar in fintech?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're still to see the actual applications and use cases. I think where we see they offer the kind of earliest promise is in roles which are have required quite a lot of kind of desk-based manual research. So I think they can offer huge efficiency gains in compliance, particularly around customer due diligence and aspects like that. I think anyone kind of in a strategy type role, these tools are indispensable. I really see these AI tools as kind of superpowers for staff, and we should be embracing them as much as possible.
Okay, and you don't see any inherent risks? Obviously, when we talk about the risk of AI, it's all about apocalyptic things that are going to happen. But from a fintech perspective, are there risks that need to be taken into consideration?
Absolutely. I mean, whilst AI can provide efficiency gains in areas like compliance, the risk is that businesses become lazy. Ultimately the business is still responsible for underwriting and risk management, and if they're relying exclusively on AI tools, as opposed to kind of using them to supplement and kind of speed up what they do, that can obviously introduce considerable risks. And again, in other areas like software development, AI is certainly helping our engineering team ship product features faster. But I guess the risk is, if not used in the right way, they can introduce bugs that maybe haven't been properly quality controlled for or tested for. So the risk is that we get lazy.
Yeah. Well, that's the fascinating aspect, isn't it, really, about AI, that we, as you said, most guests here today will point to that for the next 10 years, but where exactly it's going to go is still maybe a little bit unknown.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway, that was great to have you on the podcast, Luke Wingfield Digby. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm pleased to say that I've been joined by Jayadeep Nair, who is the founder of Inqyre.AI. Jay, how are you today?
I'm very well. How are you? Thank you for having me today.
No, not at all. Great that you could join us on the podcast. Listen, we'll come to Inqyre.AI in a minute and the problems you're trying to solve there. Tell me first about your background, how you've got to this point.
Yeah, thanks for that. 25 plus years globally in the payments, data, and credit space. There's a lot that I've seen in this space. I used to be Chief Product Officer at Equifax, which is a credit bureau here in the UK. I used to run payments acceptance for Amazon, which means everything that happens after you buy your stuff and put it in the wallet, put it in your checkout box. And I've been in the payments space for a fair while, not just in the UK, but in the US, in the Middle East, and Asia Pacific. So I've seen the evolution of payments technology and the evolution of innovation, and I'm translating some of what I've seen into Inqyre, which is my startup.
Yeah. So let's move on to Inqyre. What are the main problems you're trying to solve then?
So we are specifically focused on two problems for payments companies. And by payments companies, I mean those companies that are focused on merchants. Mm-hmm. We're trying to solve for onboarding challenges. And you have a lot of very superb competitors out here in this floor today who are solving parts of the onboarding challenge. People like Comply Advantage, for example, who are solving problems of anti-money laundering, and there are others who are solving KYC problems. But merchants have a lot more problems. It's about Is the website live? Are they trading what they say they are trading? What are customers saying about them? All of these things matter to companies who provide them payment services. So we do a holistic onboarding service at Inqyre, and AI is perfectly positioned to actually do that. The other side of the coin is the compliance problem. Most of the payment companies who work with card schemes like Visa and MasterCard have to follow their rules. And these rules are frequent and regular, and typically they could be in PDF format. So to be able to help them understand, digest these rules, and use them in their workflows, AI is best positioned to handle all those things, I believe, and we believe, and we are going to try and make that happen.
Okay. Now, you speak to any of the companies here at FinTech Connect today, they will of course say that they are utilizing AI within their business. But what does that actually mean? I mean, it's very easy just to tick the boxes, as it were. But I know you've done some research among the C-suite, haven't you, to try and dig down a little bit further and to see the challenges maybe that the C-suite are facing in implementing AI.
Yes. So let me start by saying I'm a huge proponent of what is an organic technology. And I think many of the firms who are on the floor today are actually genuinely trying to use some part of AI, machine learning, generative artificial intelligence, some form of AI in their stack somewhere. We did research, myself and my associates, over 25 C-suite leaders, including board-level individuals across the UK and some from the US as well. And we asked them about how AI is changing the way they operate, particularly how their customer experience is changing. And I have to say the result was Marmite. We had people who were much further down the stack of wanting to use AI. There were others who would say that they wanted to invest 80-90% into AI, but they wouldn't know what to invest it in. And fundamentally what we found is two things are happening. One is there is a AI fatigue happening in boardrooms because there is so much talk of AI and so little use cases that have made sense that boards are running to their chief technology officers the moment they hear AI, right? But they know that they have to do something about it. They just don't know what. So ownership becomes diluted. There's not one clear owner of AI. Everybody's trying to do some of the stuff. And that actually feeds into some very interesting research that MIT has done, which says 95% of AI initiatives in enterprises have failed. So it's only 5% that have succeeded. Whether you believe MIT or not is yours. But those 5% are because they are trying to solve core operational, the not interesting problems that are not the same as trying to completely change the world.
Is that a healthy situation? I mean, I guess, obviously the bare stats sounds like most of these projects are failing, but that 5%, if there wasn't that experimentation, if there wasn't that attempt to push things forwards, maybe that 5% wouldn't happen.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. And I think that is what you're seeing. Common terminology now talks about the AI hype cycle and that we are at the top of that hype cycle. It happens at every technology evolution, whether it is mobile payments or others. There is a point at which the technology stabilizes, and for that to happen, you need to have more innovation happening. I'm certainly one of those that is trying to drive innovation in that space, but I'm also focusing on the problems that are kind of core operational, where AI can actually make a solution. I think that you will see a lot of change. You will see consolidation. You will see evolution.
Okay, well, given that, I'd be really keen to hear your thoughts on what might happen in the next 10 years. Before I do that, it's the 10-year anniversary of FinTech Connect, so we're asking all our guests what they feel has been the most transformative change in FinTech within the last 10 years. You've been in payments, FinTech for 25 years. What do you feel about the last 10 years?
So I think that the most transformative change for me has been the pace of evolution of individual innovation, the ability of individuals to become businesses themselves, right? And that, whether you call it a gig economy at the one end or individuals starting to set up businesses on their own, I count myself being one of those. And that's underpinned by two things. I think that's underpinned by the growth of organic technology. So evolution of mobile technology, for example, in payments as well as in other ways. And second is the positive growth, at least in Europe, of regulatory change. If regulators in Europe had not opened financial services to fintechs and individuals using PSD2 or open data, you wouldn't have seen the proliferation of innovation that is happening here. So I think growth of human innovation, if you want to set up a business in the last, recent past, you don't have to worry about ad agencies, designers, banks, payment companies. They're all there. And I think that has spurred the biggest growth. Anyone who has an idea and who is able to follow through with it can set up a business. And to me, that's massive.
Okay. And a harder question to finish off. The next 10 years, you've mentioned Agentic AI, you've mentioned generative AI. What's the one thing that's going to make the biggest change?
I think firstly is the continuation of the trend for organic evolution of technology. AI is just one of those, right? Technologies emerging that helps individuals do better at it. Yes, there will be kind of ups and downs at it, but I think that is one big trend. And the second one I'd quote is the evolution of digital money, which is the CBDCs or the regulatory change that is fostering the growth of digital money. It's not going to happen in 3 years, but I think in the next 10 years, we're going to see a transformative change there.
Okay. Well, Jayadeep, Nair, it's been brilliant hearing your insights on the podcast. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you very much for having me. Have a good day.
Many thanks for all of my guests for joining me here at FinTech Connect at the Excel in London. Really hope you've enjoyed these conversations. And if you have, then please do give us a positive rating or review on your podcast app of choice. You can get in touch with the show via the contact form at csuitepodcast.com, or you can find me, Graham Barrett, and the C-Suite Podcast on LinkedIn. But for now, thank you very much for listening, and goodbye.